can have a goal or a desire or a plan, but it requires some work.
All right, what's up, everybody? YouTube land, social media land. This is Christopher Harris coming again. I tell you, this has been an incredible journey. The last couple of weeks have been absolutely amazing as we've been on this journey talking about temporary assignments, y'all. Who would have thought that I could add author to my title, that it become a reality here on my first book? And I tell you, it's something amazing about putting your whole heart and soul into something on paper, to have people critique without you being present, and then to be able to get quality feedback has been incredible. Today, you all, I have someone who is absolutely a guru, a mastermind, an incredible guy, not just in his field, but I'm one of those folks that I follow what people do and what they say, and he's just amazingly consistent. He is funny. His posts, you guys got to go follow him on Instagram. I'm gonna throw some of those. We're gonna tell you some of his, how to connect with him a little bit. But if you follow him on Instagram, I promise you, at least 5 or 6 times a week, you're gonna laugh. You're gonna get that humor that he has, that posting those pictures. I want him to tell me his secret of where he gets those pictures from, but I'm scared to ask. So anyways, we'll talk about all that a little bit later on. So ladies and gentlemen, I've got on the line here Mr. Phil Cooke himself, extraordinaire in communication, particularly with faith-based organizations, an amazing track record of getting some pastors and ministries and preachers that all of us have followed over the years. Mr. Cooke, is the background, the guy that has gotten them marketed and on TV and in radio and all that kind of good stuff. And so rather than me trying to quote your whole resume, Mr. Cooke, do you mind just taking a moment and just sharing really quickly, everybody, just a little bit about some of your work, some of the things that they may not even know that you've had your hand in doing?
No, I'm thrilled to. Let me start by saying congratulations on the book. That's a big, big step. I mean, well done. Very, very well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
A lot of people talk about writing books, but not many actually sit down and do it. So congratulations. I'm really excited. And I would encourage people out there, get the book. Absolutely get the book. It's going to be something you need in your life, and it's going to be incredible. It's the kind of stuff that we all need. The world changes like crazy. I mean, the culture changes, people change, trends change, styles change. And if we don't stay up with how to adapt and change in our life, we're going to get left behind. So books like this are primary on my shelf because it helps me stay on top of what's happening in the world, because it's so easy to get left behind. So congratulations. It's a great thing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So tell us a little bit about, just so people know who you are.
Generally, what we do is help Christians not suck at the media. We have a passion that this is a media-driven culture. And if we're going to speak the language of the culture, we need to get it when it comes to television or movies or radio or social media or our online presence, doing YouTube channels, things like that. And so we feel called to help churches and ministries, pastors, ministry leaders, nonprofit leaders use the media to their advantage to help get their story out. It's so incredibly important. Christopher, we live in a culture where people are being bombarded with about 5,000 media messages every single day. I mean, the distraction is overwhelming. So learning how to cut through all that and get your message heard is absolutely critical. And it's kind of what we're about. So we've been very fortunate. We've worked with everybody from Billy Graham to Joel Osteen and hundreds of people in between, and helping them really establish their presence in the media and get their message out in a bigger way. So we're thrilled to do it. And I have a passion for everybody, and you're included. People that want to get that message out, get it heard. That's what we want to help.
That's incredible. So that means then that you've seen lots of success stories, but you've also seen some people bump their heads regarding reinventing themselves and adjusting messages. And, somebody asked a question one time here at our church, why do we have so many different translations of the Bible? And just kind of off the cuff, the thought came to me that, language changes over time. And so really, we have these translations because, 30 years ago, if someone had said, walked up to you and said, hey, are you going green? You would have been looking at your skin like, what are you talking about? But today, and our
Yeah.
content going green, it means something regarding recycling and, environment and all that. So it has a context now that's very different than before. So when you think about that, what are some of the things that you think would be relevant for people to know regarding their personal brand and their life and the messages that they send about themselves and their careers, and how they may either be behind or on point or whatever that may look like?
That's so true. I mean, I'm fortunate. I have two 20-something daughters, and they're very upfront with me about the way I dress, the way I look, what I'm doing. Dad, please don't go out dressed like that. And I always say it's good to surround yourself with people that are plugged into the culture. As Christians, you study the life of Jesus, and he spent his time where the people were. And those days, it was the marketplace, it was the temple square, it was social gatherings like weddings. Well, today people are online, or they're watching media, they're in movie theaters. And so I think if we're going to be relevant, we have to see what's working out there, what television shows are popular, what magazines are popular, what movies are popular, what social media sites are popular. And if we can start just staying aware of those things, it makes a big, big difference. Christopher, people hate to change. And I think that's our biggest battle. We hate to change. I read one study that said the vast majority of open heart surgery patients within a year go back to their old lifestyle, the lifestyle that got them there in the first place, which means if the threat of death doesn't make you change, what in the world will? And we've seen drug addicts, people, alcoholics, people that struggle with all kinds of addictions. Change is just very, very hard. And so it's not an easy, we can't be flippant about the idea that we have to stay on point and constantly be changing, but we absolutely have to do it. No matter how difficult, no matter what the struggle, we have to do it. Otherwise, like you say, we become irrelevant and nobody's interested in listening to our message.
Yeah, I actually say in the book that if you don't change, you get stuck, right? And it's a simple statement, but when we think about the frustrations that oftentimes people have in life, they are seeing things around them, but they feel stuck where they are, and they can't move. They feel locked in, and so that's really, really good. I
read a study recently, a research study that indicated most people are not being promoted in their job because they refuse to learn the new things it takes to go to the next level in their career. And so, people all the time get frustrated. Why am I not making more money? Why am I not getting the supervisor position? Why am I not getting promoted to the vice president or the manager? It's because you refuse to make the kind of changes that next level requires. And so it becomes a life and death issue. It becomes the fact that if we can't make those kind of changes, we're never going to go anywhere in our career. We're never going to fulfill what God's called us to do with our lives. And it becomes really, really a critical thing.
Wow. Life or death, huh?
No, I think so.
Wow.
Yeah, no question. I know that my parents struggled with change to the very end. And I just never want to be that guy. I never want to be so locked into one way of thinking that I can't adapt to something new. And otherwise, what's the point of being around?
So how does Phil Cooke, the guy whose phone is ringing off the hook with some of the biggest leaders on the planet all over the world, are calling you, and you've got all these demands on you. You're running a company that's got multiple facets of it, and you're helping people put movies together and sermon clips and broadcasts, just all of that, right? How does Phil Cooke stay relevant? How does he not become that guy?
A couple things, and I would encourage people watching this to write these kind of things down. Number one, I read an enormous amount. I read 2 or 3 daily newspapers every day. I'm constantly reading books, not just about not just novels, but books about my industry, what's happening in my industry. I'm going to conferences. I think, invest in yourself. That's what I would tell people. Invest in yourself. Buy the books that'll give you the information you need to get to the next level. Go to the conferences where you can mingle with the people you need to meet. And the third area I would say is challenge yourself. If you're a Republican, if all you ever talk about or all talk to is other Republicans, you're missing a lot out on life. And if you're a Democrat and all you ever talk about is whoever you talk to is Democrats, it's the same way. Well, if you're a church person and you never talk to non-believers, you need to get out of your bubble. You need to start engaging with people that disagree with you. They don't think the way you do, because it challenges your thinking. And when you allow yourself to be challenged, you'd be amazed the doors that will open, and the thinking, the way it'll open up your mind. And so I'd encourage people to, read an enormous, as much as you possibly can. It's important. Go to movies, watch television, read magazines, get that stuff inside of you, see what the culture's saying, and then get outside of your bubble. I think that's the biggest problem with Christians, for instance, is Christians just struggle getting outside of our bubble. We don't want to talk to people that disagree with us. We don't want to talk to people that we think are heathen. You gotta get out there and meet them. Jesus was always engaging people who didn't believe what he believed. And Paul was the same way. Mars Hill in Acts 17 is a great example. He was out there engaging those pagan philosophers in Athens. And that's what we need to do and stay on top of things. I think it's incredibly, incredibly important.
Wow. So I got to ask you then. So you said you read, 2 or 3 newspapers a day. Is there a technology that you use? Are you using the physical paper? Like, are you literally opening the physical paper?
Great question. I'm an iPad guy. I've always been a newspaper person, but I read the Wall Street Journal every day. I'll read 2 or 3, bits of the New York Times, USA Today. And I read the LA Times here in Los Angeles, where I live, because I like to see what's going on locally. And I travel an enormous amount. So I try to read the local paper in the cities that I'm traveling in, just to see what's going on there. But no, you know what? I got tired of newspapers. I fly a lot. Yeah. And it's just too hard to wrestle a newspaper on a plane. Yeah. So I got addicted to my iPad, download them there, and it's fantastic. I love it. I absolutely. And I can go back and see previous editions if I miss something. Yeah. So I have to tell you, iPad changed my life.
Yeah, I tell you, it's one of the funniest things on the planet to see is those folks who are getting on planes and once right before the plane takes off, and they've got this big newspaper that they're trying to open and flip the pages, and it's hilarious.
It is, and the truth is, Christopher, I'm a magnet for nuts on airplanes. If there's a crazy person on an airplane, he will sit next to me. And very often they're the guys that wrestle with the newspapers, or they're just crazy people of all kinds. And so I do notice those kind of things. It's pretty funny. And that's a big part of it too. Just noticing things. I think a big part of, the fact that I've been doing this for so long is that I notice things a lot of other people don't. And I think if you start watching, we all like to talk a lot. Very few of us listen very well, and we don't observe hardly at all. And I'm a big believer that if we can start listening and observing things around us, we'll start seeing things that other people don't. And that's really the definition of vision. We talk about leaders with vision. Leaders with vision are simply men and women who see things other people don't see, or they're looking at the same thing other people look at, but they see something different there. And certainly that's the definition of a great artist.
That's so good.
Yeah. So having that kind of vision and seeing things from a different perspective can change everything.
Without naming names, tell me probably one of the craziest things that you've seen a leader do that reflected being stuck, not changing, not reinventing themselves, either regarding themselves or their organization or their family or whatever it may be. Is there a story or an idea or an experience that comes to mind?
Well, I talk sometimes about wanting to build a museum of bad Christian television, but I can't find a building big enough. Trust me, there are so many failure stories you can't even imagine. One of these days I'll write a book. But there's a lot of stories. For instance, I know people that fought me on the online world. I worked with a number of ministries trying to develop an online presence. And they fought and fought and fought. In fact, one major media ministry refused to build an app, and I finally had to go build it in secret. And I unveiled it for them, and they were shocked that actually people would want to see this. And so the digital transition, which has been huge in the last few years, a lot of people fight over that. And you mentioned the different translations of the Bible. There are guys that will fight to the death over the King James version of the Bible. I've actually, you'll love this. I've actually been in the British Library in London, and I've seen an original 1611 King James version. I was filming one, and I discovered that in the introduction, the translators of the 1611 King James Version of the Bible said, you know what? We've done the best we can, but we hope other translators will come along in the future and do a better job. And so if the guys that actually translated the King James Version hope others will do a better job, the least we could do is be open to it.
Yeah.
So, people get stuck in a lot of different ways.
That's incredible. So what's you've been in the industry of media and all of that for 35 years?
Yeah.
So
at least.
what's been the most surprising thing that you may have seen coming, but you didn't realize it was going to take off as fast as it did, or it took hold and it accelerated? What's been one of those things that just kind of blew your mind?
Mega churches. You know what? When I was in college, I went to college with a lot of guys who are now successful pastors. And my dad was a pastor, so I never really wanted to follow in those footsteps. I found out early on through media, I could reach far more people with one program than my dad reached in his entire lifetime.
Wow.
But I never envisioned how mega churches would explode the way they did. When I was in college, there was just no such thing as those, churches of more than 1,000 or 2,000 people. That was just unheard of. And I just didn't see that coming. It's an interesting phenomenon that's just exploded, but it's one of the things that I did not see coming, and it took me by surprise. But, obviously we adapted to it really quickly, and I've been helping churches navigate that world. But I'm thrilled that many people want to come to church anywhere, so I don't have any criticism.
Yeah.
But I was not expecting that to be so popular.
Yeah. So I'm gonna take a little curve here for a moment, just because of your expertise. When we start talking about change and transition and all of that, a lot of the folks that will probably watch this here on YouTube or online somewhere, many of the folks that I'm connected with and that I follow, they've got online ministries. They've got, media that's a part of their ministries. What are some of the things that you see where folks in ministry particularly that they're doing in this year, in this time, in this century, if you would, that's just so behind still that, it just kind of, it's that thing that makes your hair stand up behind your head that you wish you could just pick up the phone, call them and say, please stop doing this now. What's those 2 or 3 things on that list? And he's laughing because you're probably trying to figure out how to edit what you're thinking about, huh?
Yeah. How do I get down to 2 or 3 things? That's a big question. Yeah, I think that I think we get hung up on really trivial stuff in churches today. Really trivial stuff. I think I met with a pastor recently who is still arguing over whether they should have drums in the worship service or not. And
Are you kidding?
I said, I think we crossed that bridge about 1970. And he said, no, not at our church. We're still arguing about having drums.
Wow.
I'll tell you something that's blowing me away out there is the popularity of live streaming. And this is something, I don't care if you're preaching to 20 people, you can still live stream your service. I met a pastor in Oklahoma City recently who preaches to 700 people in his sanctuary every Sunday, but he's got 10,000 people following him online on his live stream. And it's super cheap to do. It's not like, buying TV time. It's online and it's super cheap. So any pastor of any size could immediately expand his audience. And one thing we've discovered with our clients that we're helping do live streaming is that probably half the audience is international. They're coming from around the world. And so if you want to immediately make a leap to having a global ministry, start live streaming your services. Every time you preach, I get out there and be live streaming that, because you never know who would be interested in finding that and listening to your message. And plus, keep in mind how many people have gone through your church and maybe moved somewhere else and would love to go back and hear what you have to say, or college students that have gone away to college and want to check in on the church. So I say, live streaming is something that not enough pastors are thinking seriously about. And it's really taking off. In fact, we've got a couple of clients that are making as much, this will sound weird, but they're making as much as 1/3 of their total income from their live stream audience. I had one pastor call me a few months ago and say that Sunday, his income from his live stream, the offering from his live stream audience was higher than the offering from his church audience. And so if you make them feel like they're part of your church, part of your worship experience, people could be real excited and want to be a part of that. So I wish more pastors would get onto the understanding about live streaming. Another thing I would say real quickly, and I don't want to take up too much time, but social media, pastors are just not getting social media at all. You know, it's so much more than just twittering out a Bible verse once or twice a day. Social media is social, and people, you know, I always tell pastors, particularly if you're a successful pastor or, you know, relatively large church, people just can't call you up and have coffee with you whenever they want. You know, you're busy, you're working on a lot of things, you're leading people, but through social media, you can give them a kind of an insider's glimpse of what your life is like behind the scenes. And so I just talked to a ministry leader this morning, and she would tweet scriptures or post on Instagram a scripture with a picture of a flower. You know, I love sharing, you know, the gospel, but nobody wants that. You know, read the Bible to get your scripture. On social media, you have a chance to engage with an audience, discuss things, talk about things. So I would encourage pastors, don't just blow that off. I've got 32 or 33,000 people that follow me on Twitter. So I take that seriously. Those people want to hear what I have to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that's important.
So I got to ask this, right? You talked about the live streaming, and I agree with you. I think 2016 was the year of live video. I mean, Periscope, Facebook Live. I mean, so many things that are out there. I'm just trying to think of how to say this. In my mind, when I watch some people do Facebook Live or Periscope, though, with their sermons or their ministries and their churches, in my mind, though, I'm thinking some of them don't need to be on there.
Well, yeah, okay. Yeah, you're right. I agree. Can't argue with that. But by the same token, there's some guys that shouldn't be in the pulpit. There's no question about that, too. So, you know, I'd rather err on trying it out and failing than not trying at all. I say dip your toe in the water. You might be nervous. If you don't know what to do, ask a 18-year-old in your congregation. You know, get some young people around you that can share a little bit about what's going on, and get some advice from people who have been there. If you know other pastors that are doing it well, talk to them. Get some advice from them.
Wow.
Call, companies like ours, or you can go to my blog at philcooke.com and get a lot of advice about social media. Just search for social media. So there's some sources out there that would help. But you're right. So when it comes to live streaming, it'd probably be better if some didn't. But those are the guys, rather than telling them not to, I'd like to grab them by the throat and slap them around a little bit and teach them how to do it better. That's my goal in life, is to, instead of saying don't do it, let me sit down with you and let's talk about how to do it better. So there you go.
Well, awesome. Well, we're gonna start wrapping up here in just a moment. There's two more things I want to do really fast. Obviously, I want to talk a little bit about your books. I know you've got 3 or 4 books that are out there as well. One of which was just absolutely incredible for me to read. I ended up reading it twice. The second time I read it a lot slower and almost ended up highlighting the whole book and about your one thing, one
big thing.
Yeah, your one big thing. So before I talk about that, though, let me ask you, what have been some areas of your own life where you felt like, man, I wish I had made that change sooner. I wish I had learned that lesson sooner. And it's maybe somebody told you about it, but you didn't hear it, or you didn't receive it, or you didn't have the understanding and context to be able to embrace what they were saying sooner. Let's talk about that for a moment.
You're reading my mail. When I was 36, I got fired from my job. And, it was like I should have left about 6 or 8 years earlier. But, I read recently that the 2 most addictive substances in the world are heroin and a regular paycheck. And we get in this rut. We get a regular paycheck, and suddenly we got a good church we go to, or our kids are in good schools, we start thinking, well, God, maybe what you called me to do after all is really this, and not to go to Hollywood, to not try to impact other ministries or make films or television or whatever. And so I kind of got sucked into this regular paycheck thing. And it was actually, I think, God that stepped in and finally fired me, because I didn't have the nerve to leave or the guts to leave. And so sometimes, and I've discovered a lot of people are that way. Sometimes we just have to hit a wall. I often think when we hit a wall and have no other option, that's the best thing that could have ever happened to us. I look back 25 years later, and I think hitting that wall, getting fired, was the best thing that ever happened to me, because that's what it took to jolt me out of my rut and start thinking in a different way.
Jolt.
Yeah, that's right.
That's your book.
Jolt. That's right. So I wrote a book about it. So I think it's important.
So okay. So you get fired. You're 36 years old. Do you have a family at the time?
Yeah, I had two young daughters, married, had two young daughters.
Right.
And we realized we were in the Midwest, and I realized I could not stay there and pursue a career in the media. There was nothing going on there outside of the one job I was in. And so we decided to move to LA. And, I immediately started talking to people. I suddenly got out of that shell, out of that bubble, started reaching out to people that I had met or known over the years, let them know that I was available. I decided to go freelance and start my own little business instead of going to work with somebody else. And I had to really put my nose to the grindstone and focus. And it took about 6 months for the transition to happen, but we made our way to LA. And we launched Cooke Pictures, which is the company that we have now. And again, it was the best thing that ever happened, but it took a real jolt. So I tell people that are listening to this, that thing you think that's the worst thing that ever happened to you, believe me, in a few years, you'll look back and realize this was the best thing that ever happened, because so often we need that hitting the wall in order for God to get our attention and to refocus us in a different direction. So incredibly important. So that was the biggest change, big switch that happened for me, and it turned out to be fantastic.
So if you can, the Cliff Notes version or the elevator version, give me some quick insight, and those that are watching this, what was life like in those 6 months? You said it took you about 6 months to kind of get established. Tell me what was going on then. Tell me what life looked like marriage-wise, what it looked like for you as a dad. Now you're a freelancer, contractor. I mean, just talk about that for a moment.
Give you a few thoughts. And I think this is important for anybody trying to launch out like that. Number one, make sure your spouse, your partner, whatever significant other is on the same page with you. I can tell you this, one of the biggest reasons marriages fall apart in Hollywood is because one wanted to come to Hollywood to pursue the dream and the other one didn't. I met a guy the other day, he was a screenwriter, and he said, my wife and I decided to come to Hollywood. She gave me 6 months because she didn't want to come to Hollywood, but she said, look, let's go for 6 months. Try to make it as a screenwriter, do your best. And he said, 6 months are up and I haven't gotten a job yet. And she wants to go back. And I find that all the time. If you're both not committed and on the same page, sooner or later, it's not going to work out. It's either going to be your career you lose or your marriage that you lose. So number one, before you step out like that, make sure both of you are on the same page. That's incredibly, incredibly important. Wow. Because if that happens, you can accomplish just about anything. No amount of suffering will matter. We were able to get the word out in a big way. This was before social media, but I started picking up the phone and calling. I just started calling. Fortunately, I had been able to do freelance jobs on the side for a number of years. So I knew ministries like Joel Osteen's dad, John Osteen, and I called Joel. He asked me to come down and help him. Joyce Meyer in St. Louis called me, and I started helping her rebrand her ministry. Was able to do a project with a Billy Graham organization, even some secular projects. Phillips Petroleum in Bartlesville, Oklahoma called me, and I did a number of video projects for them just to get going. And so you start reaching out to contacts, relationships, people you've known in the past, and that's what you start. Now, something else is I started writing, and this is before my blog, but I started writing for industry magazines. They don't pay much, but they don't have a staff. And so they're always looking for people who write articles. So I started writing articles for television and film magazines about shooting internationally. I'd done a lot of producing internationally, about how to do this, how to do that. Suddenly, people started reading those articles and looking at me as like, I must be an expert. They didn't know the truth, but they looked at me like an expert. So, and then I started going to conferences and helping behind the scenes. And it was a conference I was helping behind the scenes when one of the speakers, his flight was canceled. He couldn't make it. They all looked at me and said, "Hey, Phil, can you take his place?" That was the first time I ever spoke at a conference. And so just by being at the conference, helping out backstage, working behind the scenes, positioned me to be the guy that when an opening happened, I was able to go and speak. And that started my career speaking at conferences and events and doing teaching. So I'll tell you, the thing I'd say more than anything is just be open to the possibilities. You know, don't put God in a box. Don't assume your career in Hollywood is going to work out this way. It certainly hasn't worked out the way I hoped or the way I thought. My life has gone in a completely different direction. But I think it's gone in a good direction, a healthy direction. And just because largely I've been open to the weird possibilities that have happened, but trust me, they happen. And so be encouraged. I think that I seriously encourage people in this economy to think about stepping out. It's exhilarating and terrifying all at the same time, but you're working for yourself. I have many clients that I deal with, but I get to define my schedule, my pace, all those kind of things. And it's a great life. And I really am honored and very grateful for it.
Last question that I have for you.
I didn't mean to go off on such a.
No, trust me, I'm eating all of this up. What does when Phil Cooke and his wife decides to run off into the sunset and drink sweet tea on the beach and just hang out, and they don't want to travel much anymore? What does Cooke 2.0 look like, and what does the next generation and the next iteration of your work look like when it comes time for you to kind of settle down and do succession or do a handoff, if you would? What does that look like?
That's a great question, and we're asking those questions right now. I think. I mean, I don't know if I can afford to quit working. I'll end up being a greeter at Walmart, maybe. I do a job that I really love, and I just cannot conceive of myself sitting on the beach all the time. I would like to spend more time writing. I do. That's one of my great regrets, that I don't have enough time to write as much as I'd like. But I don't know that every job has to have a successor, and every organization needs to move on to the next generation. We may not, but I have no intention of slowing down at this point, and I'm thrilled to be able to do what I do. And at the end of the day, we have the satisfaction of we're not doing ketchup commercials or car commercials. We're doing work that helps the gospel be heard and seen by millions and millions of people around the world. And ultimately, if I could help a church or a ministry organization do that, I'm very, very happy. Very, very happy.
Wow, that's incredible. So, ladies and gentlemen, you have heard it from the horse's mouth. Such wisdom, such insight, just amazing. I wanna beg you, plead with you. Please go online, and I'm gonna let him share all of his website and social media tags and all those things so that you guys can go and follow him. I'm going to be very candid and honest with you all as you watch this. I probably get maybe 150 emails a day, and sometimes I don't get to all of them. But I promise you that when I see that engage, inspire, and I'm forgetting the third one right now, but when I see that newsletter pop up, that is one email that I always open up. There's not a lot of people that I can say that about. And I am never, ever, ever disappointed with the articles, the content, the perspective that's offered in there. I'm always challenged. I always grow. My wife probably is so tired of me forwarding that newsletter or forwarding an article that I got from Phil Cooke. And so when I told her the other day that I was interviewing Phil Cooke, she was like, "Well, my God, are you moving out to work for Cooke Pictures? Like, what are you doing?" So,
well, you're very kind, Christopher. You're very kind.
Well,
thank you.
I'm very honest. I'm not making that up. Trust me when I tell you, because there's some newsletters. We're at the top of the year, and one of the things that I do at the end of every year is I purge some of my subscriptions. And so this past December, I'm very serious. This past December, I probably unsubscribed from about 40 different blogs. I use Feedly. Are you familiar with Feedly?
I use it too.
Yeah.
Love it.
I love Feedly, and I literally just kind of start looking and saying, okay, which ones started accumulating because it just wasn't interesting anymore? Which ones started, they started moving away from encouraging and inspiring content to sales pitches and all of the, once it starts getting to that point and it's not engaging for me and uplifting for me, I say, okay, unsubscribe. So, how can people connect with you and follow you?
I'm Phil Cooke with an E, Cooke, PHILCOOKE, and my blog is philcooke.com. And my Twitter handle and my Instagram handles are both Phil Cooke, at Phil Cooke. And so that's the best way to go. My blog is kind of the hub, as you mentioned, of everything I do. So you can reach everything I do from my blog at philcooke.com. And if you just Google Phil Cooke, Cooke, all that stuff will come up. And I'd encourage people. We get some interesting discussions on there and some interesting comments from people about different things. And I would say that if you really want to go to the next level in your life and understand how to use media to get your message, your dream out there, come visit the blog, because we're talking about that stuff on a regular basis. And I'd encourage you to go check it out. And thank you very much for the kind words. That's very, very gracious of you.
Well, it's the truth. I wouldn't say it if I didn't believe it and if it wasn't true. So, guys, we've been talking about temporary assignments for the last couple of weeks. Today, I had the amazing privilege to have Mr. Phil Cooke on, and we didn't realize that the interview was going to go this long. But I thank you for your time. Once time is gone, you don't get it back, and so I hope that this hasn't been a waste of your time, guys. Listen, go follow Phil Cooke. Plug in with him on Twitter, on Instagram, follow his blog. You can subscribe right there. It's one quick 2-step, easy. Go get my book, Temporary Assignments. You'll be blessed by it. Wisdom for reinventing your life and pursuing your purpose. And follow me on YouTube. Follow me on Instagram, on Twitter. It's at CJ Harris, ONE on all of those. And I can't wait to have you a part of the conversation, a part of the tribe and the family. Look, I'll see you the next time. Peace, everybody. Thank you for tuning in.
You can have a goal or a desire or a plan, but it requires some work.